Hi guys, it's Kales, and I ended up reading 24 books in the month of December. I have no explanation. Yeah, you heard me right. 24, as in 2-4, as in 6 times 4. There are a lot of ways you can do 24, and I read 24 books. The majority of them were graphic novels. 13 of them were graphic novels, and 11 of them were actual books. Like, over, 20, 30 pages. This is gonna be a long video, so let's get started! The first book that I read in the month of December was Manners and Mutiny, which was the last book in the Finishing School series, and I am so happy that I finished this series. I finally got to see where everybody was and how they ended up, and I just loved it so much more that they were older and all the skills that they had learned, as well as like the romances playing out and just it was good. Then I read In Real Life, which was one of the coolest, most interesting graphic novels I've read about this girl who is living in the world of online gaming, and she uses it to create a political movement, which was really cool and like just so interesting. The art was awesome. I read it in like a day and I loved it. I thought it was a very fascinating look on technology and how it connects people in the world, and it was good. It was a great story with a good message behind it, and I mean, if you haven't read this graphic novel, you should pick it up, because it's a quick read, and it's nice and good and just enjoyable and nerdy to boot. Then I read Ivory and Bone, which is, I don't know what genre this belongs into. It's YA for sure, but it's like set in like prehistoric times, because I don't know if they're Eskimos, but they live in like the north where it's cold, but they hunt mammoths. And it's also like a retelling of Pride and Prejudice and a romance, historical fiction, I don't know. Anyway, it's good, and I really liked it. I picked up on all the Pride and Prejudice allusions, because it's not exactly a retelling, but it's close. And this format was really fascinating to me because it was told in second and first person, because he was telling the story to the girl that he was talking about. So instead of saying, Maya approached me, he says, you approached me. So the format is a little weird to get used to in the beginning, but I liked it because it was different, and I hadn't seen it before in YA. I appreciated that risk. I also fell in love with this love story, and the environment was really interesting. There was a lot of information dump in the sense of like so much exposition about how this world works and like all the things they use, so you could tell it was well researched, but I didn't need all that information. I needed more story and more just enjoyment, and I don't know how it's gonna be a series, but supposedly the second one is coming out. I was actually really happy with how it ended, and I was just content with it, so I don't know how this is gonna move on, but we'll see. Then I read A Study in Charlotte, which is supposedly like a Sherlock Holmes retelling modern day thing, and I didn't like it, if you can't tell by the change in my body language and my tone, because I struggled with this book in how they were descendants of Sherlock and Watson, but then like the Holmes family trains their children to be like Sherlock, but not everybody's like Sherlock. That's the point of Sherlock, and Watson has like this book of like how to handle Holmeses, and I'm like, they're not all the same. There's a boy and a girl, so like romance is gonna happen, which I just hate, because to me Holmes and Watson are like the ultimate bros, and it just is an insult when I think you put them together romantically. I know some people ship the living daylights out of that, but I don't, and I didn't like this book. I figured out the mystery, which I always hate when I can do that in books, and I just didn't enjoy it. Not hardly at all. But this next book I did enjoy, and that was Adulthood is a Myth by Sarah Anderson, which is the greatest comic about all the things of adulting in the modern day and age. I just love this one. It's so great, and her sequel is coming out very soon, and I just, one, the cover is fuzzy, the words are fuzzy, and the sweater is fuzzy, and I like that. If you haven't heard of Sarah Squibble's, it is a great Tumblr page, and you should look out on there so you can get the comics. I really, really enjoy the humor and the lightness, and it's great. It's funny. That's why I got it for Christmas. Here we go on this graphic novel kick right here. I'll do those all together. But then I read Miss Marvel, which I thought was okay. I will say I liked the different representation. and the diversity of the superheroes in this one. I thought the characters were interesting. I couldn't care less about the plotline. And this weird origin story about how she, like, magically is bequeathed her powers, I didn't understand. I didn't get the purpose of it. It just felt kind of like a gimmick to put more diverse superheroes into the world of Marvel. But, you know, I mean, to each his own. Again, it's not my favorite, but that's okay. I'm starting to find that I'm not a big superhero graphic novel fan. Moving on. Oh my gosh, guys, then I read one of the funniest books that I've read ever, and it's Choose Your Own Mystery, which is the Choose Your Own Adventure books, but instead Choose Your Own Mystery is a parody on it. They're written by 2 writers from The Onion, which means you know it's gonna be good. And it's like, choose your own misery for the holidays, and like your plane gets delayed, or you go with some creepy guy because you can't get on the bus. And a couple of adventures of it all, I ended up like cleaning up vomit in a church and all these other things. It just was a great adult version of Choose Your Own Adventure, and I think there's like a Choose Your Own Adventure office party one, or in the office or something like that, and I just was really happy with these, and they were hilarious. It was a good, like, fun thing to do for a day and read. Then I read one of my favorite collections of the entire year, and that was Princeless. This blurb on here says it the best. These comics are what Disney should have been doing the whole time. Basically, it's about this girl named Princess Adrian who gets locked in a tower by her dad, and she has like 7 sisters, and she finds a sword under her bed and decides to rescue herself. So she and her dragon run away to go rescue all the rest of her sisters. I am in love with this series. I'm in love with Princess Adrian, and I think it's amazing. Just so good and well drawn and a great story, and I'm like, why hasn't this been done before? I'm so upset, and so now I'm glad I discovered it, and I read the first 3 volumes, and I need to get my hands on the other ones, but our library doesn't have them, so I will find a way. Love them. Read them, please, because they're amazing. The other graphic novel series that I binge read was Lumberjanes, and I've already read the first Lumberjanes, but then I got the rest of them from my library, and I read up to the 5th one, and I also just love Lumberjanes and how these are just best friends, friendship to the max, and such a diverse group of women. There's a great lesbian love story in there, and it's just, I love the weirdness of it. I love how there's like a time paradox and you don't quite know what's going on, and I just love how they're friends, and I love how in one of them you got kind of their origin story. The dumbest one so far has been like the mermaid things, but I love how they don't question their own reality. They're like, wait, how can mermaids have a rock concert? They can't have electricity down there. What? Ugh. And yet they are just hilarious and go with it, and they're friends, and it's great. On the same note of excellence, I cannot talk about this book highly enough. It's called The Call. This book was a mystery thriller, and it was completely out of my comfort zone. And it scared the living daylights out of me in the best way possible. This book was brilliant and different and amazing, and it is about this Irish society. It's based off Irish myth, where fairies have decided to seek revenge on the Irish people for banishing them, and start suddenly taking their teenagers one by one for 3 minutes and 4 seconds. And after those 3 minutes and 4 seconds, they return the children, and they're like dead, mangled, gross, something like that, because they go to the Darklands, Shadowlands, fairy world, and they show up there naked and have to survive. It's insane, and you follow the storyline of this girl who has polio, and so her legs are mangled, and running is a big thing. They have survival schools, and it just is gripping and terrifying, and I listened to the audiobook, and it like made me want to vomit in my car because it was so just visceral and crazy, and how has no one talked about this book? It was so good. Ugh, it gives me the chills just still thinking about it. Ugh. Let me talk about the frustration that I had with Stalking Jack the Ripper. Stalking Jack the Ripper was dumb. It had a really great premise. It started off really, really cool. This very interesting young lady is an apprentice for her uncle who cuts open corpses and studies them for science, and it's fascinating. And she was really cool. It was a really interesting concept. And then it went down the crapper. It was terrible. Like, I predicted what was going on the whole time, and I knew what was happening, and it was like no mystery. It was stupid. God, she was also so whiny and had no character development. And it was like this drama Frankenstein thing. It wasn't even like Jack the Ripper or mystery. It turned out to be Frankenstein and science-y and dumb. Just dumb. I mean, I can give it that it was well written. Like, there were some sentences I was like, ooh, drool over, but ugh, just disappointing. Don't bother. Continuing with the mystery thriller kick that I was on in December, I read With Malice, which was a very interesting psychological thriller. And I say that because I still haven't made up my mind about it. I rated it highly. Like, I think I gave it like a 4 to 5 stars because it was good, but I still haven't made up my mind on the ending. And I don't know if I will. It's about this girl who wakes up in a hospital with her leg broken and a brain injury, and she can't remember the last 6 weeks of her life, and she's apparently killed her best friend in a car accident in Italy, and she doesn't remember any of it. And it's very interesting, the process she goes through, and it's very interesting about the mind and the brain and memories and influence, and it had an interesting take on the media overtaking one's life. It was a confusing read. I would still say it's worthwhile. Like, pick it up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, because I'd love to have a conversation about it, because I just don't know. Then I read one of the best fantasy books I read all year, and that was The Crown's Game, and this was cool. I will say, I was kind of disappointed because it felt very, very similar. I feel like I've read other books like it very much before, and there's somewhere in there's a video of these books are the same, because I was hinting at other books I read before, and I just was like, this is really interesting. It is about these two teens who are both enchanters, and they're the only enchanters in Russia, and in order to save the country, they have to compete in the Crown's Game to see who will become the ultimate enchanter. See, it sounds very familiar, doesn't it? But I also was confused about the magic system and how they could just, like, do anything. I will say for this book, the tension building was amazing. The whole time I was like, I don't know where this is gonna go, like, how's this gonna end? But at the end, the relationships were all interwoven, and you're just like, oh my god, what is gonna happen? And so I will say that her rising action and climax were so well constructed, and I was really excited to read it and to continue with this series because I want the next one, and I want to see what happened, and the cliffhanger, oh my god, that cliffhanger. Sorry to spoil that there was a cliffhanger, but there's a cliffhanger, and you're just like, what? What? Just like that. I read this beautiful book, which is Snow White, which is a graphic novel. It's like Snow White in the 1920s, and I will say, it was gorgeous. It is a beautiful little movie and a book that I experienced, and it's just gorgeous. There aren't a lot of words because you know the story of Snow White. The interpretation of it is beautiful, of the evil queen and the 7 men, and I want a copy of this because I love it, and it's beautiful and surprisingly good. Moving on with my graphic novel kick, this makes me so happy, was Gut Instinct by Heart and Brain and the Awkward Yeti. This is the next one in a collection in the Awkward Yetis series of Heart and Brain, and I love them. Again, just such an accurate, fun, cheesy portrayal of what it's like to be human, and I love it. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I managed to listen to this heartbreaker of a book, The Sun Is Also a Star. I listened to this on audiobook and I couldn't stop. It's such a beautiful interwoven story about how we live as humans in a society, and I just was enamored with it. I haven't read a book this tear-jerking and this heartfelt and this oh my god, what it means to be human since Fault in Our Stars. It's very much in that same realm of also just sobbing and good and moments and what they mean to people and hope and life and The only reason I did not give it a 5 out of 5 stars is because the format was weird, especially on audiobook. It was something I didn't quite get what was going on. It took me a while to get into the story, a long ass while. It wasn't until halfway through the book was I invested. Also, it's very reminiscent of the movie Serendipity. If anybody's seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. I also loved the characters in this one, and the diversity was great, and the family dynamics. I also love that they were real people in terms of well-roundedness in their lives. It was really good. Also very opposite attracts, and this cover is gorgeous. Then, because it was the holidays, and in the spirit of the holidays, I read My True Love Gave to Me by a variety of authors, edited by Stephanie Perkins, and it was delightful and good and fun, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because I liked most of the stories than the ones that I didn't. And there was some that surprised me. I think my favorite was the 2 people in the apartment complex, and the girl who kept coming down to get a shower was from an author I'd never even heard of before. So now I have more authors to check out, but it's just a great, put me in the holiday mood for it, and I listened to it on the plane as I was going to see my family, and it was great. The next book that I read, oh my god, think about another book that oh my gosh, put me in a tailspin of debate and interesting family dynamics. I loved this book also because it had no romantic interest. It was all about the media and family, and it's called Life in a Fishbowl. I don't think I said what it was, but it's Life in a Fishbowl by Len Vallejos, and I'm gonna go into more about this because it comes out next year, and I read this arc because Len gave it to me, and I will do an honest review, but I will say that I really liked it, made me think, which I enjoyed. I loved how different it was than most things I've read in YA, and it was just endearing and interesting, and it's about a man who sells his life on eBay because he has a brain tumor and he's dying, and he kind of gets involved with this reality show of him dying and the impacts that that has on his family, and the tumor is personified, which is fascinating, and I'm gonna do a full video on it later because I want to talk in depth about it. Finally, the 24th book that I read in the month of December was Rebel of the Sands. This book was amazing. Started off as amazing. I loved this concept. I thought it was so cool. This world was amazing. Got me into it, sucked me in here about these two people who meet at a shooting competition. I was fascinated by this desert sands and Middle Eastern mythology and all of it. Then it stopped because they pulled in superpowers and pulled in Chosen One and pulled in all this crap that was so YA it made me want to vomit. They put in all the tropes you could possibly imagine, and just in one instance ruined one of the most unique stories I had started to read and just completely and utterly bombed it by making it like every other YA book I've ever read, especially in this fantasy genre. Like, it just pissed me off because I was like, you are going on such a great route and it's amazing, these like side characters and then just this journey to get out of where you are and move on and have a better life, and no special skills except the shooting, and then no superpowers and princes and a rebellion. So many tropes, I don't even know what to do with myself. Anyway, I was mad and frustrated, so that's why it only gets a 3 out of 5 stars. So this is only a fourth of the books that I read in the month of December, but I think it's a good representation of all the books that I managed to read and how much I loved them, and I just had a great reading year. My next video is going to be all about that reading year, the best and worst books that I read, my book statistics, but talking about these books right here. If you guys want to talk about any of the books that I read in the month of December, let me know down in the comments below. What were some books that you read that you liked or disliked in December? I'd love to hear from you guys. Until next time, bye! We'll start from the first books that I read in December going all the way up until the end of December, because that sounds like a good place to start, you know. Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Yeah, that's going in the bloopers. To me, Holmes and Sherlock, because so much. One of my favorites is like the eyeballs that are looking at Stomach, and Stomach's like, we can't eat a whole pie, and the eyeballs are like, yes we can, and we will. This is gonna be a long ass video to edit.